Hello everyone, today I have for you the best disruption build that I could possibly make in Warframe. I made this build specifically to farm disruption fissure missions as efficiently as possible, and missions like this basically. And I don't know if you ever come over here and see one, but it's for a planet like Jupiter or Neptune where there's Corpus disruption missions, and you're like, dang, the 20 Grenier disruption builds that I have from other YouTubers just don't work on these, so I can't farm it. Well, this build's going to work on every single disruption node and be able to level cap them. And the only thing you're going to have to change out is a faction mod and a element mod on a single weapon. So for our Warframe, we're going to be using Octavia, and we are actually going to be helmeting off her resonator for Pillage for some armor strip, and then all the other good things that this ability does that I'll get around to. For the primary weapon, we're using the Bubonico for a primer. So for the secondary weapon, it will be a Tenet Plinx, and you're going to get a Toxin Progenitor on it, and this will be our main DPS weapon to kill Demolists, and we'll be using the direct impact of the charged attack, the Alt Fire, and this is insanely strong because it is not doing 160 base damage, it is actually doing 10 times that. It multiplies it by 10 for whatever reason, so it's doing 1600 base damage. And that's why you want a 60% Toxin Tenet Plinx, because it is just making the base damage just go it's insanely high. For our Acolyte killing weapon, we'll be using our melee slot with a Exodia Contagion Zaw. And then finally, for our companion, we'll be using a Smeeta Kavat to increase our farm, especially Steel Essence when doing Fissure missions. Once you hit round 18 on a Fissure mission, you have a 100% resource booster. And that is crazy because when you have that resource booster, the one you bought from the market, and then a 1 Smeeta Charm buff, then you get 16 Steel Essence from an Acolyte drop. So if you're not farming any Steel Path Disruption missions, you should make this build and try it out, because the Disruption Fissure missions are the fastest Endless ones to get the ducats you need and Steel Essence you need, because you can complete rounds way faster than Survival. It takes like 2.5 to 3 minutes with a squad, instead of like the 5 minutes in Survival. So we have a lot of duration on this build because all these abilities scale really well with duration, especially her 3. And this is her invisibility, and you want a lot of duration so you don't have to teabag a lot and micromanage that. And then we don't have much range, we just need to stay above 100% basically, because with Mallet, enemies will be shooting this thing, and when we have Amp activated also, the range will double. So you're just dropping this, enemies are killing themselves, they're dropping keys while you're killing a Demolist, and you come back, grab a key, put another one in, and it goes really fast. And when you're doing the Fissure missions, they're dropping the Reactant also. For the ability strength, we have 149% because we need 200% for Pillage to armor strip in 2 casts. And we're getting that with Molt Augmented, so once this is stacked up, then you'll be able to armor strip in 2 casts. So when I cast Pillage, you'll see a circular radius expand, and this is scaled off of our duration. The higher duration we have, the further out it goes. And once it reaches that enemy, they'll get a little aura, and when the ability runs out, we'll get a little spark, and that spark gives us shields. We can actually pull our spark back faster, so we can cast more to armor strip faster just by tapping the ability again, like this. And once I do it 3 times, it'll strip this heavy gunner. And this ability does sorta kinda shield strip, but you need 400% power strength to 100% shield strip, because it's based on the current amount of shields they have. So if I do this twice, it'll take half, and then like 25%-ish. And it's just never going to go all the way down. Also, when you cast Pillage, it will cleanse you and all teammates within range of status effects. Sadly, Pillage is a line of sight ability, so if I go over here and cast it, I will not get any shields from those corrupted heavy gunners, but once I come up here, I'll get these shields from them. And since we'll be invisible with Octavia, it'll be very easy to keep these overshields that Pillage gave us. So this will tie in very well with our Arcane on our Tenet Plinx, Cascadia Overcharge, that gives us 300% critical chance. We're using Cascadia Overcharge on our Tenet Plinx because we have Hornet Strike for base damage, then we also have Octavia's Amp, her 4th ability, to increase our base damage. Octavia's Amp is usually not a very strong damage buff because it is additive to Hornet Strike, but we do have a mod on here that is not additive, it is actually multiplicative. That mod would be Galvanized Shot. So Galvanized Shot is going to be really strong in this weapon because it's not adding to a multiplier we already have, like Hornet Strike and Amp, it is becoming a new multiplier to increase our damage even further. So for some of the more notable mods in this build, we have Prime Sure-Footed, but you can actually use the Unairu Focus School like we're using for the Poise passive, and that makes it so you don't need Prime Sure-Footed if you don't have it. Then with Breathe for Spite, we'll be able to shield gate with both Pillage and our Metronome. So all the other mods on here are basically stat increasing mods, but for the energy regen, we have on Prime Flow because she has a great energy pool, and then also Equilibrium, and it's a very good source of energy because Eximus drops so much health, And then also she has a passive that basically lets her regen 1 energy per second in like practical use because you're always using abilities. If you feel like you need more energy, you can just change off this arcane. It's basically a flex slot arcane, but I do like the fire rate on the Tenet Plinx because it lets you just shoot more frequently since the charge up is so fast. The only mission I would suggest actually putting on Energize for is a solo Grineer mission, like solo play, because there's not many enemies and you have to always be armor stripping. So you might actually run out of energy and have to armor strip with Unairu or something like that. Then for the Archon shards, we have on 1 ability strength shard to get that 200% ability strength with our multi-augmented and strength mods. And then also I have on 2 casting speed shards. These are necessary for amp because you're going to be using amp to kill Demolus, so you need to drop that really quick and be able to do actions afterwards. Then the other 2 Archon shards are basically whatever you want, but I highly, highly suggest parkour velocity shards because it makes missions just go faster because you're moving around better, and it feels so good. If you've never done it, I highly suggest you try it, especially if you like Warframe movement. And also, we don't have on Amalgam Barrel Diffusion, so our dodge speed is pretty slow, which feels bad. For the Tenet Plinx build, we have on crit and damage. We get to 235% crit chance with Cascadia Overcharge and Prime Pistol Gambit. We have on Hornet Strike, so we can amplify the damage with Galvanized Shot, Multi-Shot, crit damage, reload speed because the Tenet Plinx takes forever to reload, and then our faction mod and our elemental mod will be changing up depending on what mission we're on. If you're going against Corpus, you want toxin damage because it goes through shields. If you're going against Grineer, you want to put on a cold mod, and obviously the Grineer faction mod because viral damage is best against the armor-stripped cloned flesh of the Grineer. Against Infested, you want to put on Prime Heated Charge to make gas damage. There's actually no Fissure missions that appear on dark sectors, I'm pretty sure, so I don't think you'll ever actually have to do a Fissure mission against Infested, but you can still do this if you just want to do this for fun. So in all my clips, I am using a magnetic Kuva comb with this build, but I highly suggest you put on a Bubonico to prime instead, because it's better. It's better because you can get cold and viral onto the same weapon, which you cannot do with the Kuva comb. Having cold on a primer is amazing quality of life for a disruption build, especially against Kuva Guardians, since Magus Lockdown makes it so they don't like strip their armor off, and then you can't use Magus Lockdown against them anymore. So the only way to slow them down is cold. So for the Bubonico build, I suggest this one. I suggest the Amalgam Shotgun mod because of the revive speed, so you can get up your Kavat faster. And then having these mods unranked because on the alternate fire, where you shoot the radial attacks, you want to get as much viral stacked on as possible, so you don't want a ton of gas or cold because you can already get that on the primary shot. And the priming with this thing is great. You just put 2 alternate fire shots in, and then the rest of your ammo in as the primary fire. And it almost always gets you 10 stacks of viral. I only ever see 9 sometimes. Then it gets you the 6 elements just like the Kuva comb has. So then to kill Acolytes, I suggest using a Zaw with Exodia Contagion, this arcane that goes on it. You only need a rank 0. You don't need a Riven. Oh, I guess I should show you the parts. The parts are these. These are the biggest big dick damage that you can possibly get for a Zaw, especially with the Riven disposition on this Crunch. My Riven is critical damage, melee damage, critical chance. You don't need a Riven. If you're not using a Riven though, I would suggest you put on viral damage and then strip the Acolyte's armor because that will do the most damage against them. The rest of the build is crit chance, damage, some wind-up speed and crit damage, and then crit damage. The reason we're using the heavy attack wind-up speed is because we're going to be doing a heavy attack with our Exodia Contagion. You go into melee only mode by pressing or by holding weapon swap, then you will double jump, then hold glide, slide, and heavy attack. A couple more tips to kill Acolytes. When you're Octavia, throw down your amp while the Acolyte's spawning because then you'll do more damage when you throw your Exodia Contagion. And then actually lock down and hit the Acolyte with your Zaw because the damage fall off on Exodia Contagion is actually really insane. I'm going to throw my Zaw right here, and it's doing 22,000 to that right tornado. If I hit the tornado itself, it did 26,000. So for the focus goal, we're mainly using Unairu for the Caustic Strike to strip enemy armor because it's faster and cheaper than Pillage. And also, against shielded targets, you cannot strip their armor through their shield until their shield's gone. And we're never going to get that shield gone. Also, you'll be able to revive yourself even at level cap with these 2 nodes, and then also we'll be able to strip armor and strip shields to help us revive ourselves when we're just our operator and our last gas. For the operator amp, you need this one to revive yourself. You can actually use any prism you want. I just prefer this one because you're able to apply a void bubble easily with it, but that's not too important for this build. Then you definitely need this brace because it shoots out a little melee projectile that bounces around and kills enemies when you're not even in the area. And then the Scaffold will actually proc Void Bubbles more often because it gives us increased status chance. So once you go down, you're going to go into Last Gasp, and if you're going against armored enemies, you're going to armor strip them. If you're going against shielded enemies, you'll just shield strip them with your other ability. It's going to look like this. You can lock them down to make them not move. You can go off in an area where you're able to hide, then just start shooting your balls at them. And you'll see little Void Bubbles proc on them, maybe, that they don't just immediately die. This is what it looks like when the Void Bubble procs. Right here. It's just going to stay in there and keep hitting them. For the Operator Arcanes, you're putting on Magus Elevate to heal yourself during health drain, and then Magus Lockdown to lock down Demolist, obviously. Then Eternal Eradicate for your Amp for a little bit more damage, and then Eternal Logistics so you can keep spamming those little melee bouncy balls. For the Mandachord, you just set every node to a note, and then you turn off all the sounds so you don't have to hear that garbage. For the pet, we're using the Smeeta Kavat to increase our farm. And for the mods, we have on Synth Deconstruct and Synth Fiber, so we're able to create health orbs and then pick up the health orbs whenever we have full health. That's what Synth Fiber allows you to do. Tech Assault for Kavat survivability. Tech Enhance to increase the length of Charm and Mischief. We'll be invisible most of the time, but if we forget to put up our invisibility or something happens, our Kavat will still stay invisible most likely. And then we have on Hasten Deflection because the shield recharge rate is better than putting on health and armor at level cap. So now I explain the whole build, so I'm just going to go into a mission and explain the practical use of this build to you and give you as many tips as I can. So one of the first things I do when I'm trying to level cap or go in a mission for a really long time is check the tile set, especially with this build. Mallet here. It does not have a huge range. I mean, Amp does make it bigger, but walls and other things block it. It needs line of sight to kill enemies. So if there's not a good place to lay out Mallet, I will just restart because just restarting will make the mission go a lot quicker in the long run. Also, it's a really long way between these two conduit rooms. Like I have to go all the way over here, then down, then into this room. And this room's like giant, so it's going to be really annoying to kill enemies and Demolists because they're just going to be all over the place. So I'm actually going to restart. So let's see if this tile set's here a little bit more tolerable. I can probably throw down my mallet here or something, kill some enemies in the middle there. And then the other conduits are over here, just through this hallway into this room. It's not a terribly long way, pretty straight shot. Probably can even operator through it if I do it correctly. Yeah, not bad. Probably do this one instead. Plus, I like that big open room that was back there. So, man, see how I just threw down my mallet? Already got a key. Didn't even throw down my amp. Got 275 energy, and I've done nothing. Make sure I'm invisible, and start stacking my weapon. If you don't have galvanized shot stacks, which is like that little star-looking thing in the top right, you can get a 3 max of them. If you don't have all 3 of those when you try and kill a Demolist, you won't be doing damage. So if your mallet doesn't have energy waiting for you after energy drain, just go ahead, pop a energy pad. And also if you fail an energy drain, it's not that big of a deal because you can stay invisible for 30 seconds and the ability lasts for like 40 seconds. So every minute you're gonna be able to set down this and cast your 3 to remain invisible. If you're against armored targets, turn into your operator, armor strip them, and then blast them. And you can get through around that way, no problem. The one good thing about Mallet is it gets rid of nullifier bubbles. That is a amazing part of the ability. Use Pillage, get up my critical chance. Get my stacks up. Now go kill this guy. Let me see where he's at. I want to jump into his nullifier bubble. Let him get closer to me. Then I'll just lock him down. He doesn't need armor stripped. And then pump him full of this. Switch to my weapon. Blast him. I didn't use my amp that time. I just locked him down, primed him with my Bubonico, and then shot him with my Tenant Plinx. But I will use my amp for this one to show you what it's like. You definitely need the amp for a lot of kills at level cap. You don't need it for the early ones though. So here, I'll lock him down, armor strip him, throw down my amp, pump him full, switch, shoot. So this guy's spawning, throwing down my amp. I'm going to hold weapon swap, locking him down, and I'm going to heavy throw. I forgot to armor strip, and I have on viral damage, no Riven, and I still one-shot him. Now I'm going to put on Energized because I'm playing solo, and I'm going to go try a Grenier Fissure. So yeah, I don't love this room down here, but look how close this is. Like, here's one conduit room, then here's the other conduit right here. For all the other conduits in this room, I'll have to go up there, but it's not a big deal. They're shooting at my cat, so that was annoying. And luckily, some of these guys will die that don't have armor. And then, since there's so many people in here, they will slowly whittle down themselves. But once there's like 1 or 2 armored guys, there's not going to be enough damage spread across them. So I'll have to start armor stripping. And energy is going to be really hard to come by right now in the beginning because there's no Eximus. So I'm just going to armor strip a little with this. I'll armor strip once to get my shields. Now we should probably try and find a better place for this amp. So right here, maybe on this box, so the box isn't like clogging it up. Just throw it right there and see how that does. Yeah, see, it's hitting all these guys. Everyone in this area is going to be getting hit. You got to make sure you find a good non-blocking line of sight area. Stack up my Plinx by armor stripping, killing the enemies. I forgot to put on viral, but it doesn't matter because we're so early in this mission. And then the Kuva Guardian, my favorite. I don't know how to get this thing to drop its freaking weapon. Magus Lockdown seems to be what messes with it. She finally did, so now I will armor strip her, slow her down with my Bubonico, prime her up, and shoot her in the head. I'm going to sit here and start shooting my pistol so enemies round up around me. This is why I didn't put Suppress as the Exila slot on my pistol. Just gotta stay away from that nullifier. Now I'll take away his bubble, throw down Mallet, Amp, armor strip a few times. So I think that mostly gives you the idea. Just always have down your Amp and your Mallet, and this will just get enemies killing themselves. When you're in the circle with them, just go ahead and armor strip them so they'd start dying faster. This will get you to drop keys, reactant. It's just going to get it moving faster. Anytime you see a group of enemies, just throw down the mallet around them. It'll replace it, but most of the time the enemies move away from your mallet towards where you are, especially even though you're invisible. So you can just drop down the mallet and get them all killed. The only conduit debuffs that I feel like are a real problem are energy drain. So just make sure when that comes up, you just throw down a mallet, an amp, and then cast your third ability so you can stay invisible for the entire time you need to kill the Demolist. And then there'll probably be some energy when you come back, or just use a energy pad when you're done with the energy drain. Health drain's also kind of a problem, but we have on the Operator Arcane Magus Elevate, so you can just go in and out of your Operator. And that will give you 300 health. It is a 95% chance, so be aware of the 5% chance that it fails and do it again. And then shield drain is never a problem with this build because you get basically 1200 shields every time you cast Pillage. So there's a ton going on with this build, and I went through it as fast as I could, so the video is not 20 minutes long. This is actually my second time recording it because I feel like it wasn't good enough. So since I put in so much effort into this video, it means it's not going to get really any views because there's a clear correlation between effort I put in and views. The less effort, the more views. The more effort, the less views. So please comment, like, and share this video because this build is honestly amazing and super worth people building. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below because I'm sure other people will have the same questions or other things to say, and I can respond to them then, and then everyone gets their questions answered and learns more. And also, if you have any suggestions to make this build better, or another build that you think is better, please tell me, because I would love to see it and build it and use it myself. Alright, thanks for watching. I'll see you.